Hey guys, tonight we are not slipping into medieval castles or drifting through Victorian parlors. Tonight the story opens in a far more ordinary place. An American kitchen with a coffee pot that's gone lukewarm and a man shifting uneasily in his chair. He doesn't know it yet, but he is about to step onto a path that will shrink his world to a handful of hours, a few scraps of powder, and a life measured in doses. This is where the horrifying life of a fentanyl addict begins, not in an alley or a shelter, but in the quiet promise of medicine. And as you sit back, letting the sounds of the world around you soften, remember you probably won't survive this story. Few people do, but we're here to wander it slowly anyway, tracing each step from comfort to collapse. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, and what time it is for you. I love seeing the little constellation of places where these stories are heard, nights stretching across the globe in different shades of silence. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with an accident, as it so often does. Not a headline-grabbing accident. Nothing dramatic, just one of the thousands of small fractures in daily life that land people in hospitals. A car skids at an intersection. A ladder wobbles on a construction site. A back bends wrong lifting a box. Picture yourself sitting in the bland fluorescence of a hospital waiting room, the faint antiseptic sting of disinfectant lingering in the air. The television mounted in the corner tuned to a channel no one is really watching. You shift uncomfortably, leg throbbing, back stiff. The doctor calls your name, leads you into an exam room, taps at a tablet, and after a perfunctory exam, reaches for the printer. Out comes a prescription, a white slip of paper with neat black text, the kind of thing people carry home every day without a second thought. You fill it at the pharmacy around the corner. The pharmacist slides an orange bottle across the counter. The label is clear, official. Your name, your address, the instructions spelled out in precise numbers. Take one every 6 hours as needed. The bottle rattles reassuringly in your hand. You think of it as healing. The doctor said this will help you rest, help you get back to work, help you take care of your family. That word, help, feels like a lifeline. You clutch it tightly as you leave. Back home, you sit at the kitchen table. Sunlight filters weakly through blinds, catching the faint scratches on the wood. You open the bottle. A smell you can't quite place rises up, chalky, chemical, clean. You tip one small white pill into your hand. It looks harmless, smaller than a dime. You chase it with a gulp of water. At first, there's nothing. Then slowly, like a tide creeping in, warmth spreads outward from your chest. Your muscles unclench. The throbbing in your leg eases. For the first time in days, you feel comfortable in your own skin. You sleep deeply that night, the best rest you've had since the accident. Morning comes and the world feels manageable. You take another pill with breakfast and the coffee tastes sharper, the toast less dry. You can bend without wincing. You can walk without grimacing. You tell yourself it's temporary, just a few days, maybe a week, until the pain subsides. But the bottle sits on the counter like a promise, and you find yourself reaching for it not only when the pain returns, but when you anticipate the pain returning. One in the morning, another before bed, a third in the middle of the day, taken a little earlier than scheduled, because why wait to suffer? The relief is intoxicating, though you don't call it that. You call it normal. You tell yourself, this is what normal feels like again. For weeks you've been restless, irritable, snapping at people without meaning to. Now you're calmer. You can read the newspaper without losing focus, smile at the cashier without forcing it. You can sit with your family at dinner and actually laugh at a joke. It feels like coming home to yourself. And isn't that what medicine is for? To make you yourself again. The bottle empties faster than expected. You shake it, hear only a faint rattle of 2 lonely pills. You look at the calendar and feel a small jolt. This refill isn't supposed to be due yet. You tell yourself you dropped a few. that you miscounted, that it's not unusual to need them a little sooner. At the pharmacy, you mention that the dosage seems low. The pharmacist nods mechanically, taps a few keys and hands over another bottle. The system obliges, at least at first. For a while it works. You go back to work, lifting carefully, stretching when you remember, but the pain doesn't vanish. Not entirely. Or maybe it does, but your mind remembers the comfort, the ease, the soft glow of the world under the pill's embrace. You begin to count hours not by clocks, but by doses. Noon becomes time for another pill. Evening becomes one more before dinner. The prescription slips from a guideline into a rhythm, and you follow it without question. The people around you notice subtle shifts. A friend says you seem calmer, almost too calm. Your spouse remarks that you're sleeping more than usual. You brush off their comments. You tell yourself it's just recovery, just healing, but the truth hums beneath your skin. You've found something that not only erases pain but erases unease, erases the sharp corners of the day, and once you've learned that feeling exists, how could you willingly go back to a world without it? The refills keep coming, though with slightly more resistance each time. The doctor glances at your chart a little longer, asks if the pain is still severe. You nod, convincing even yourself. The pharmacy asks for confirmation, but eventually the orange bottle slides across the counter again. Each new supply feels like a reprieve, a safety net stretched under the tightrope of daily life. But somewhere in the background, something begins to shift. The regulations tighten. The news fills with stories about overprescribing, about overdoses, about doctors being investigated. Pharmacies start to limit quantities. Your doctor hesitates, frowning as they type. The refill doesn't come as easily, and one day the system runs dry. The orange bottle is empty on the kitchen counter. You shake it once, twice, 3 times, as if more pills might appear if you just rattle hard enough. Nothing. Now the kitchen feels different. The sunlight through the blinds is harsh. The chair presses against your back wrong. The air itself feels restless. You realize it's not only pain you're missing, it's the soft tide that carried you through each day. You sit staring at the bottle, feeling something gnawing deeper than bone. A hunger, a clawing emptiness, louder than the original injury ever was. You don't have words for it yet. You just know you need more. And then the whispers begin. A co-worker at the job site mentions a guy who sells pills cheaper than the pharmacy. A cousin mutters that he knows someone downtown who always has something stronger. You shake your head at first, pretend to resist. But the thought lodges itself in your mind. Stronger, cheaper, available. And slowly, almost inevitably, you follow the trail. The first time you hold one of the street pills in your hand, you try to convince yourself it's the same as before. Chalky, white, stamped with familiar numbers. It looks identical to the ones that came from the pharmacy, the ones you told yourself were medicine. You place it on your tongue and chase it down with water. At first, the effect feels the same. Warmth blooming in your chest, muscles loosening, the pain ebbing. But soon you notice differences. The relief is sharper, faster, and it fades much too quickly. The glow doesn't stretch for hours anymore. 2 hours, maybe less. And already you can feel the tide receding, leaving you shivering in its wake. You tell yourself, it's fine. You can take another. You have a few in your pocket. But the mind remembers the first time, the long, soft relief of the original pills. And now each new swallow feels like chasing a ghost. You can never quite catch it again, but you keep running anyway. Historians still argue whether human beings are more addicted to comfort itself or to the promise of it. In your case, it doesn't matter. The memory of comfort becomes a compass that points in only one direction. Work feels like a blur. You show up late, distracted, jittery until you've taken something. At home, you tell your spouse you're just tired. You say you'll cut back once the injury fully heals. But deep inside, you know you're not chasing pain relief anymore. You're chasing a memory, a feeling, a version of yourself that seemed briefly possible. The bottle from the pharmacy was predictable. It came with instructions, with a neat rhythm to follow. These new pills are wild cards. One is strong, another weak. One lingers for 3 hours, another fizzles in half that time. You begin carrying them with you everywhere. In your pocket, in the glove compartment, in a drawer at work. The world becomes divided into two categories. The times when you've taken a pill, and the times when you haven't yet. Every conversation, every meal, every small errand bends itself around that schedule. At first, you still try to keep up appearances. You shave, you dress neatly, you make small talk, but the cracks widen. You fall asleep mid-sentence. You forget appointments. Your hands tremble when you hold a coffee cup. The people who love you notice. They ask if you're all right. You nod too quickly. Avoid their eyes. You tell yourself it's temporary, just until the back pain settles, just until the stress passes, just until life steadies again. But life doesn't steady. The pills are different now, and though you don't know it yet, they're not the same medicine. They've been pressed in basements, smuggled across borders, laced with something far stronger, fentanyl, a substance so potent that a speck the size of a grain of salt could tilt the balance between relief and oblivion. You don't know that yet. You only know that the new pills make you feel warm again, if only for a little while. Days begin to warp around the cycle. You wake, take one, feel calm for an hour, then restless again. You take another before work, another at lunch, another on the way home. Nights stretch long and uneasy without them. You start doubling doses just to hold the relief for a little longer. The hunger builds faster than the comfort fades. In the quiet spaces of your life, standing at the sink, staring out a window, lying awake in bed, you begin to notice a new rhythm pulsing underneath everything. It isn't the rhythm of your own heartbeat, though it feels like it. It's the rhythm of the craving, a whisper that grows louder the longer you ignore it. You try to distract yourself with television, with work, with conversation, but the whisper cuts through. It always does. You start to realize you are no longer taking pills for pleasure, or even for comfort. You're taking them to avoid the absence. Without them, your body aches in ways it never did before. Bones throb, muscles twitch, a cold sweat slicks your skin, food tastes wrong, colors seem faded, the world itself feels hostile. With them, all of that disappears, but only for a little while. The next dose comes sooner and sooner, and soon enough you're not living day to day, you're living hour to hour. You look back at the orange bottles from the pharmacy like relics from another lifetime. They seem almost innocent now, quaint. You remember how you used to ration them, how you used to feel guilty about taking one early. That guilt is gone. What's replaced it is a singular focus: don't run out. That thought circles your mind like a predator, sharp and insistent. Don't run out. Don't let the pocket go empty. Don't let the stash dwindle. In the evenings when the house is quiet, you sometimes sit with an old photo album or a family video playing on your phone. You watch yourself smiling, standing tall, looking healthy. It feels like watching a stranger. That version of you seems impossibly far away, and yet you remember exactly how it felt inside that body. You tell yourself the pills are helping you get back there. You tell yourself you're repairing, healing, restoring. The truth unspoken is that you're slipping further away with every swallow. You begin to lie, though you don't call it lying. You call it managing. You tell your spouse you lost a bottle when you dropped your bag. You tell a coworker you're just tired from long hours. You tell your doctor the pain hasn't eased, though in truth you barely notice the pain anymore. It's drowned out by the craving. Each lie is small, almost believable, but together they build a wall between you and the world. Behind that wall, it's just you and the pills. And so, night by night, dose by dose, you chase the memory of comfort. But comfort has already vanished into the past. What you're holding on to now is an illusion, a ghost that grows dimmer each time you reach for it. The warmth fades faster. The glow is thinner. Relief slips through your fingers like water. You chase it anyway because the alternative is worse. The hunger, the clawing, the emptiness that waits in its place. That is the paradox you live inside. You are no longer healing, but you cannot stop. You are not better, but you cannot let go. The pills have rewritten your days, your hours, your body itself. And though you still tell yourself this is temporary, somewhere deep inside, in the quietest corner of your thoughts, you already know you are no longer the one chasing. It is the pills that are chasing you. There isn't a clear moment when it happens. No alarm bell rings. No sign drops from the ceiling reading. You've crossed the line. It happens quietly, invisibly, the way water seeps through a crack until the whole wall is soaked. One day you're telling yourself you're still taking medication. The next you're meeting a stranger in a parking lot, cash folded in your palm, eyes darting left and right. Even then you think of it as medicine. You tell yourself it's the same thing the doctor gave you, just without the red tape. But in truth, the line is already behind you, and each step forward carries you further into a country where the rules are different, harsher, unspoken. You start to learn those rules by feel. The new pills are stronger, stranger. They dissolve faster on your tongue. Sometimes they smell faintly chemical, like burnt plastic. You don't ask questions. You take them and wait for the warmth to arrive. When it does, you feel the same half-remembered glow for a heartbeat. Then the edges of your vision sharpen, your heart beats harder, and 2 hours later the craving returns twice as strong. You're not using to get high anymore. You're using to stop the shaking, to stop the crawling electricity under your skin, to keep the gnawing from eating through your ribs. Historians still argue whether people notice the moment their lives change, or only realize it later looking back. In your case, you will remember fragments. The first time you met a dealer instead of a pharmacist. The first time you paid cash in an alley instead of at a counter. The first time you realized you were lying about where you were going, who you were meeting. Each event on its own seems small, manageable, temporary. Together they form a map of a new world. The people who sell to you have names you never learn. They operate out of cars, apartment hallways, fast food parking lots. Sometimes you wait under a flickering street light, shuffling your feet as cars pass, hands deep in your pockets. You keep your head down. Transactions are wordless. A packet slips from one hand to another. Money vanishes. You walk away trying not to look like you're hurrying. The city around you feels different now. Edges sharper, shadows deeper. At home, the ritual becomes secretive. You lock the bathroom door. You turn the fan on to mask sounds. The first time you crush a pill instead of swallowing it whole, you tell yourself it's just to make it work faster. The first time you snort it, you tell yourself you'll only do it once. The first time you use a needle, you don't tell yourself anything at all. You just do it, hands trembling, heart hammering, trying not to think. And when the rush comes, when the warmth slams into your chest like a heavy blanket, you know you've crossed something. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it in your bones. The world outside begins to blur. Work becomes erratic. You show up late, leave early, make mistakes you never used to make. Paychecks shrink. Bills pile up. You pawn a watch, a phone, a laptop, telling yourself you'll buy them back next week. You stop answering calls. You invent excuses to skip family dinners. You start keeping your distance from people who might look too closely, who might see the tremor in your hands, the shadows under your eyes. In quiet moments, you still try to bargain with yourself. You say you'll stop after this week, after this last refill, after this last packet. You make plans, rehab brochures tucked into drawers, numbers scribbled on scraps of paper. But the hours between doses stretch like a desert, and when the hunger rises, you crumple those plans and reach for the powder again. The drug rewrites your priorities, your reasoning, your will. You begin to notice the physical changes. Your face in the mirror looks thinner, almost gaunt, eyes ringed with dark hollows, skin paler, dotted with small bruises. You wash your hands and notice tiny tremors. Food tastes wrong. Sometimes you forget to eat altogether. Sleep becomes a tangle of half-dreams and shallow dozes. You wake already restless, hands reaching for the packet before your eyes even open. There's a moment, one you'll remember later, when you're standing in line at a pharmacy for something mundane, cold medicine maybe, and you hear a couple behind you talking about the opioid crisis on the news. Their voices are casual, detached, like it's a weather forecast. You stand there clutching your purchase, heart racing, realizing with a strange detachment that you're one of the people they're talking about. A crisis, a headline, a number on a chart. You feel like a ghost standing among the living. The craving shapes your days. You plan routes through the city based on who's holding, who's selling. You measure time in hours between doses. Money becomes a constant question mark. You sell small things first, DVDs, tools, an old bicycle, then larger things. Eventually you're down to just clothes, a mattress, a few personal items. Each trade buys you a little more time, a little more powder. The world shrinks to the size of your need. Even the way you think changes. Once you had hobbies, interests, opinions, you read books, watched movies, argued about sports. Now your thoughts circle one drain: how to get the next dose, how to make it last, how to hide the signs from others. Everything else recedes like scenery out a train window. And yet you still tell yourself you're in control. You still tell yourself you could stop if you really wanted to. You still believe there's a line you haven't crossed yet, a point of no return still somewhere ahead. You don't realize you've been living on the far side of that line for weeks now, maybe months. You don't realize that what you're holding in your hand isn't just a stronger painkiller, but something entirely different, something designed to hook and hold with a potency your body can't resist. In the dark, with the blinds drawn, sitting on the edge of the bed, you sometimes feel a flash of clarity, a moment where you see the whole pattern laid out like a map. The accident, the prescription, the first refill, the first street pill, the first injection, each step a quiet crossing. You feel a flicker of fear then, a small voice whispering that you've gone too far, but the body is louder. The hunger drowns the voice. You take another dose and let the warmth rise, telling yourself you'll think about quitting tomorrow. Tomorrow is always a safe distance away. And so the line vanishes behind you. You have entered a new landscape now, one where the rules are different, where time contracts, where the next hour matters more than next week, where the drug has become not just something you take, but the axis around which your life revolves. You don't know it yet, but you are no longer using the drug. The drug is using you. It starts before you're even awake. A tremor deep in your belly, a tightening in the chest, a restless shift under the skin. The craving is no longer a whisper, but a low, insistent hum. You open your eyes, and the ceiling swims. The air feels wrong, too dry, too loud, too heavy. Your first thought is not about breakfast or work or the weather. It's about the dose, where it is. How much is left when you can take it? Withdrawal is a strange teacher. It begins like a mild flu, runny nose, watery eyes, a faint ache in the joints, but it builds quickly until every nerve feels electric. Your stomach clenches in waves. Your skin prickles like it's been dusted with needles. Sweat pours down your back even when the room is cold. Muscles spasm. Sleep is impossible. Every sound grates. Colors look harsh. The simplest task, standing, speaking, buttoning a shirt, becomes a small ordeal. You think about the drug constantly, but not in the way you once did. Not as comfort. Not as pleasure. Only as a key to silence the screaming. Historians still argue whether addiction is more like hunger or more like thirst. To you it feels like both. An ache that starts in the bones, travels outward into the muscles, settles behind the eyes, a clawing emptiness that no food can touch. You can eat a sandwich and feel it sitting like a stone in your gut, but the hunger remains. You can drink water until your stomach sloshes, but your throat still feels dry. Only one thing quenches it, and even then only for a little while. Your days start to contract into narrow windows of relief bracketed by long stretches of misery. You wake up in withdrawal, you hustle for a dose, you take it. Relief floods in warm, soft, blessed silence. For an hour or two you can almost function. You can speak without snapping, walk without shaking, maybe even smile at someone. But even in that small reprieve, the next wave is already gathering. The warmth fades, the ache creeps back, the hunger rises, and the cycle begins again. Money drains faster now. You sell small things you once thought you'd never part with: tools, jewelry, family mementos. Each sale buys a little more powder, a little more quiet. You tell yourself you'll buy it all back later. You imagine a future where you've quit, where you're working again, where you save up and redeem your pawn tickets. But that future stays stubbornly out of reach, always postponed to a later that never arrives. You start avoiding people who might see through you. You stop answering texts. You tell your family you're busy, that you're fine, that you're just tired. You dread their eyes, the mixture of concern and disappointment, the way they search your face for the person you used to be. You start drifting into isolation without even meaning to. You sit alone more often. You take your doses alone. The walls close in. The rooms get smaller. The windows stay shut. Physically, the changes accelerate. Your hands tremble constantly now. Your pupils pinprick. You sweat even in cool air. Food tastes like cardboard. You lose weight without trying. Sleep comes in scattered fragments, shallow and unrefreshing. Dreams are strange. Faces of people you haven't seen in years. Conversations that twist and vanish before you can remember them. You wake with your heart pounding, reaching for the dose before your eyes are even open. Sometimes you try to hold out longer, to stretch the gap between doses. You tell yourself you're cutting back. You pace, drink water, clench your fists. The body rebels. Your muscles cramp. Your skin crawls. Your mind races. Minutes feel like hours. Eventually you cave, take the dose, and feel the relief crash in. The sense of failure is immediate and total. You tell yourself tomorrow you'll do better. Tomorrow you'll stop. Tomorrow you'll make it through. But tomorrow never feels like today. The hunger inside the bones has no politeness, no patience. It doesn't care about your plans or your self-image or your promises. It just claws and gnaws until you feed it. Sometimes you think of it as an animal living inside you, coiled and waiting. Sometimes you think of it as a void, a black hole that swallows everything: money, time, relationships, memories. Whatever metaphor you choose, the truth is the same. It's stronger than you. And yet you keep a strange faith. You believe you can still climb back. You keep scraps of paper with phone numbers for rehab centers. You bookmark websites about detox. You tell yourself you'll call tomorrow, or Monday, or after this last batch. But the moment withdrawal begins, all those plans dissolve. The only plan left is the next dose. Everything else becomes background noise. You start noticing little superstitions creeping in. You tap your pocket 3 times before leaving, checking the packet is still there. You choose certain corners or alleys because they feel luckier. You arrange your doses neatly before using, as though order will protect you from chaos. You whisper small bargains into the air. Just one more day, just one more week, hoping someone or something is listening. It's a kind of prayer, but the God you're praying to is the drug itself. This is the stage where the outside world still thinks you're functioning, but inside you're already gone. You still have a roof, maybe still a job, maybe still a partner, but the hunger is running the show now. It wakes you up, decides your schedule, rewrites your choices. You are no longer living between doses. You are living for them. You begin to realize that the drug no longer even feels good. It doesn't give you the glow it once did. It doesn't make the world soft or bright. It only stops the pain for a while. You're not chasing a high, you're chasing not being sick. And that's when you know, somewhere deep inside, that the hunger has moved from the edges of your life into its very center. It's no longer just in your bones, it's in your blood, your thoughts, your breath. It is you. And still you take another dose, because not taking it feels worse than anything you can imagine. You used to measure life in weeks and months, in birthdays and holidays, in paychecks and vacations. Now you measure it in pills, in hours, in the gaps between one small relief and the next. Slowly, without ceremony, the scaffolding of your life starts to crack. At first the damage is subtle, the kind you can hide behind polite excuses. You miss a shift at work, but you tell your boss it was a stomach bug. You forget to pay a bill on time, and you wave it off as a simple oversight. You arrive late to dinner with family, eyes heavy and words slurred, blaming traffic or exhaustion. People raise their eyebrows but don't press. Everyone wants to believe the easiest story, and you are happy to provide it. But the cracks widen. Your boss notices more missed days. Colleagues whisper when you nod off in meetings or vanish for long breaks. You pawn a watch, telling yourself you'll buy it back soon, then pawn your phone, then the tools you swore you'd never part with. Each item becomes another stepping stone sold off to keep the craving quiet for another day. Rent falls behind. The landlord leaves notes slipped under the door, their tone shifting from polite reminders to sharp warnings. The refrigerator grows emptier. Takeout containers stack in corners. Dishes gather dust in the sink. The erosion is slow enough that you can almost pretend it isn't happening. Like a coastline wearing away tide by tide, the damage doesn't announce itself with one loud crash, but with 100 tiny collapses. A missed birthday call here, a forgotten appointment there. You begin to live in the constant haze of "I'll fix it tomorrow." But tomorrow, of course, belongs to the hunger. Friends stop calling as often. They're polite at first, still inviting you out, still trying to reach the person they remember. You find excuses to decline. You say you're busy, tired, catching up on work. Really, you're afraid they'll notice the tremor in your hands, the dark crescents under your eyes, the way you shift restlessly in your seat, waiting for the hours to pass. Isolation creeps in. Your world contracts, not just physically, but socially. The walls close in around you and you let them because stepping outside means risking exposure. Historians still argue whether societies collapse suddenly, under the weight of one catastrophic blow, or gradually as each beam weakens until the structure can't stand anymore. Your life is collapsing the second way. Slowly, incrementally. Quietly enough that most people don't notice until the rubble is all around you. You stop mowing the lawn. You stop fixing the leaky faucet. You stop checking the mail. Each little neglect feels trivial, but together they form a portrait of decay. Inside your apartment, the signs multiply. Piles of laundry form in corners. Trash bags sit uncollected, giving off a sour smell you barely notice anymore. The blinds stay drawn all day. Sunlight feels too harsh, too intrusive. Nights are long stretches of pacing, of fidgeting, of slipping into uneasy dozes, and waking with your body already demanding more. Sleep doesn't restore you. It only postpones the next wave of misery. Money becomes a constant problem. You juggle bills, paying just enough to keep the lights on one month, skipping rent to cover another. You borrow from friends, inventing plausible stories, car trouble, a medical bill, a late paycheck. You promise repayment. You mean it in the moment, but the hunger always claims the money first. Debt piles up. Creditors call. You silence the phone. You stop answering the door. The world outside your four walls becomes a blur of obligations you can't meet. Your relationships fray. Conversations with family grow shorter, sharper. They ask why you're always tired, why you never visit anymore, why you've changed. You shrug, mumble vague answers. Deep down, shame burns, but it's smothered under the louder voice of need. You retreat further, until visits are rare, calls infrequent, and the space between you grows wide enough to swallow whole. Work finally slips away altogether. One day you're called into the office, sat down across from a manager who sighs heavily. Eyes tired, tone rehearsed. They list the absences, the mistakes, the complaints. You nod silently. You know what's coming. When the words finally land, "We have to let you go," you feel a strange mix of dread and relief. The pretense is over. The mask drops. There's no job to hold together anymore. Only the cycle remains. Without work, the slide accelerates. Rent goes unpaid. The eviction notice arrives. You scramble to borrow, to beg, to barter. But it's not enough. The day comes when you're standing outside your own door, a bag slung over your shoulder, the locks changed, the landlord's cold words still ringing in your ears. You shuffle down the street with nowhere to go, a shelter, a friend's couch, an overpass anywhere to rest your head. The erosion has reached the foundation now. In the quiet of night, lying on a borrowed mattress or a strip of cardboard, you sometimes remember what normal life felt like. You remember waking up to an alarm, showering, making breakfast, driving to work. You remember grocery lists and weekend plans. You remember the small rituals of stability, the coffee mug rinsed and left by the sink, the bills stacked neatly on the counter, the bed made each morning. These memories feel impossibly distant, like a life lived by someone else. And yet, you still tell yourself it isn't too late. You still imagine calling the rehab number, asking for help, checking into a program. You imagine yourself sober, clean, steady. But imagination is powerless against the hunger. The moment your body begins to scream, all those hopeful futures fade like mist. You reach for the packet again. The erosion of normal life is almost complete now. What remains is a stripped-down existence, hollowed of routines, stripped of obligations, narrowed to a single point of focus. You may still walk through the same streets, past the same neighbors, nod at the same cashier, but you are no longer part of their world. You are slipping into another world entirely, one that runs parallel to theirs, visible only in glimpses, silent except for the low hum of craving. And so, another day passes. Another dollar pawned, another excuse made, another dose taken. The walls of your old life crumble quietly behind you. The hunger inside the bones pushes you forward into the shadows, and by the time you look back, there's nothing left standing. Silence has a way of creeping into your life, and before long it becomes the only companion you can trust. Once, your days were full of chatter, co-workers trading jokes over lunch, family asking about your week, the background hum of a household alive with noise. Now the world is quieter, not because the world itself has changed, but because you've pulled back from it, step by step, until all the sounds you hear are muffled through the walls you've built around yourself. At first, you withdrew out of shame. You didn't want people to notice the tremor in your hands, the restless shifting of your eyes, the way you vanished into the bathroom too often. You told yourself it was easier to stay home, to avoid questions, to put off visits until you were feeling better. Friends texted, inviting you out for coffee, for dinner, for a birthday party. You replied with polite excuses. You promised to catch up soon, but soon stretched into weeks, then months. Eventually, the messages stopped coming. Family tried harder, as families often do. They knocked on your door, left voicemails, asked if you needed anything. You answered less and less. The questions they asked were too sharp, too close to the truth. Are you using again? Why don't you come over for dinner anymore? What happened to the old you? Each question landed like a stone in your stomach, heavy and impossible to answer honestly. So you avoided them. You let the phone ring. You let the doorbell echo unanswered. And eventually, even the people who love you most began to step back. Not because they stopped caring, but because they were exhausted by the silence you wrapped yourself in. Historians still argue about the loneliness of kings versus the loneliness of beggars, but in your case the debate feels irrelevant. You are not royal, you are not destitute, but you are profoundly alone. You wander streets full of people but feel invisible, as though your body has already faded into a shadow. Others walk past without really seeing. When someone does glance at you, An impatient driver honking, a stranger muttering junkie under their breath. It only deepens the divide. You are no longer part of the world they live in. You belong to another, quieter world. You spend hours in rooms by yourself, blinds drawn, the air stale. The television might be on, flickering with images, but you're not watching. You scroll through your phone half-heartedly, liking photos of lives that no longer resemble your own. Smiling families, vacations, new jobs, fresh starts. You tell yourself you'll rejoin them someday, once you've quit, once you're steady again. But that day never comes, and in the meantime, you turn the volume down and sink deeper into the cushions of the couch. Even when you're with others, you feel alone. You might sit in a shelter surrounded by dozens of people, or huddle in an alley with fellow users, but the isolation remains. Everyone is locked inside their own craving, their own cycle of relief and withdrawal. Words exchanged are short, clipped, practical. Got a lighter? Where'd you score that? You good? There's no room for the old rhythms of conversation, for the easy back and forth of friendship. Each person is an island, orbiting the same need. At times, you catch yourself missing the smallest, simplest interactions. A neighbor waving as you carried groceries. A coworker telling you a joke you'd already heard 3 times. The casual warmth of being included in something ordinary. Now, the most human contact you have might be a dealer's hand brushing yours in a quick exchange, or a nurse adjusting your IV after another overdose. Touch itself feels rare, foreign. Isolation changes the way you see yourself, without mirrors held up by other people, without conversations, without arguments, without laughter. You stop recognizing the person you are. You drift, you lose the sharp edges of identity. You become just a body moving through cycles of use and withdrawal. Days blur together not because nothing happens, but because nothing happens that connects you to anyone else. Without connection, memory itself begins to fade. There are moments when the silence grows so heavy, it feels like a physical weight pressing on your chest. You lie awake in the small hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the refrigerator or the drip of a leaky faucet. Those sounds become your company, your soundtrack. In the absence of voices, you start talking to yourself, muttering under your breath, rehearsing conversations that will never happen. Sometimes you laugh at your own words, startling yourself with the sound. Sometimes you cry without meaning to, the tears falling silently, surprising you with how quickly they dry on your cheeks. The irony is that isolation doesn't make the hunger quieter, it makes it louder. With no one around to distract you, no obligations to pull you outside, the craving fills the silence completely. You pace, fidget, stare at the clock. Hours stretch long and merciless. The walls close in tighter. You begin to imagine the hunger itself as a voice, whispering, reminding, scolding, promising. And in that solitude, the voice is the only one that answers back. Sometimes, though, the isolation feels safer than the alternative. Being with others means risk of judgment, risk of confrontation, risk of someone noticing how far you've fallen. Alone, you can pretend. Alone, you can maintain the illusion that you're still in control, that you're choosing this, that you could stop if you wanted. Alone, there's no one to tell you otherwise. It's a cruel comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. And so you drift further. Calls go unanswered, doors remain locked. Invitations dry up. You learn to live in the hush between doses, in the soft cocoon of silence that surrounds you. Isolation stops being a condition and becomes an identity. You aren't just alone, you are loneliness itself, walking on 2 legs, shuffling down empty sidewalks, hiding in dim rooms, listening only to the voice of the hunger inside your bones. That's how normal life erodes into silence. Not with a bang, but with a retreat so gradual that by the time you notice how far you've drifted, there's no one left on the shore calling your name. Only the quiet and the drug and the endless cycle that ties the two together. By the time the door closes behind you for the last time, the place you once called home already feels like a memory. You stand on the curb with a bag that isn't even zipped all the way, filled with clothes you barely had time to grab, a toothbrush, a pair of shoes. The lock clicks behind you. The landlord's voice is curt, final, and there you are, no keys, no address, just the city stretching out in front of you, indifferent as ever. At first, you try to make it temporary. A friend's couch, a shelter bed if you can get one. But couches wear out their welcome quickly, and shelters fill fast. Rules feel suffocating when the hunger gnaws at you. Curfews, searches, long lines. Before long, you're out in the open, discovering the geography of survival on concrete and asphalt, the alley behind the grocery store, the patch of grass near the off-ramp, the overhang outside a shuttered store. These become your bedrooms, improvised and fragile. The first night is the hardest. You lie on cardboard, the ground cold and uneven beneath your back. Sounds you never noticed before become amplified. The rattle of shopping carts, the hiss of traffic, the occasional shout echoing down a block. You clutch your backpack to your chest, heart pounding at every footstep. Sleep comes in fragments, shallow and restless. You wake with a start, unsure of the time, disoriented by the harsh glow of streetlights. By morning, your body aches as much from the hard ground as from the absence of a dose. Days on the street have their own rhythm, though it takes time to learn it. Mornings begin with searching, coins in your pockets, bottles to return, someone to call, something to pawn. Anything that can be traded for a small packet to quiet the hunger. Food takes a back seat. You might scavenge half a sandwich from a dumpster, accept a banana handed out by a volunteer, drink water from a public fountain. But the stomach is secondary. The craving drowns it out. You're not alone out here. Others drift the same paths, faces gaunt, eyes hollow, bodies bundled in too many or too few layers. You start to recognize them. The man who hums to himself constantly. The woman who pushes a stroller full of bags. The teenager whose eyes are already older than yours. Sometimes there's a fragile camaraderie. A lighter shared, a sip of soda passed around, a half-empty packet split between shaking hands. Other times there's theft, anger, sudden fights that flare and die just as quickly. Trust is a luxury you can't afford. The city itself becomes both enemy and lifeline. Its shadows hide you when you need to disappear. Its alleys offer corners where you can use unnoticed. But it's also merciless. Police sweep through camps, tossing tents and bags into trash trucks. Store owners chase you from doorways. Passers-by avert their eyes, muttering under their breath, clutching their bags tighter. To them, you're not a person anymore. You're a warning sign, a ghost to be avoided. Historians still argue about how societies treat their most vulnerable, whether neglect is cruelty or simply indifference. But out here, the debate is moot. You don't feel cruelty so much as invisibility. People look past you as though you aren't there at all, and maybe in a way you aren't. Maybe you've already slipped into another version of the city that runs parallel to theirs, one where every doorway is a bed, every trash can a cupboard, every stranger a potential threat or savior. The body adapts in strange ways. You learn to sleep sitting up, head tucked into your chest. You learn to spot which dumpsters yield fresher scraps, which alleys are safer, which cops turn a blind eye. You carry less because anything you set down can vanish in a heartbeat. You keep your backpack zipped tight, strap looped through your arm even when you doze. Every possession is precious, even if it's only a ragged blanket or a cracked lighter. And yet, even in this stripped-down life, the cycle doesn't change. The hunger wakes you up. The hunger pushes you to hustle for money. The hunger decides which block you walk to, which face you trust, which corner you wait on. Every dose buys you a small window of relief, a bubble of quiet where the world softens for an hour or two. But then it ends, and the cycle resumes, merciless as ever. Sometimes in the blue hour before dawn, when the streets are empty and the city holds its breath, you catch yourself remembering the bed you once slept in, the smell of coffee drifting from a kitchen, the sound of someone calling your name from another room. Those memories feel like dreams now, blurred and unreal. You wonder if they actually happened, if you really lived that life, or if you just imagined it. The The street doesn't answer. It never does. Out here, identity begins to dissolve. You're no longer the worker, the parent, the sibling, the friend. You're just another figure hunched in a doorway, another shadow passing through, another statistic waiting to be counted. You stop introducing yourself. You stop saying your name out loud. What use is a name when no one calls it anymore? And still, despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the erosion of everything you once were, the cycle holds you. You tell yourself you'll get out soon, you'll find a program, you'll call a number, but morning comes, the craving roars, and survival means using again. The city swallows another day, and you walk its cracked sidewalks, a ghost among ghosts, living hour to hour under the weight of a hunger that never sleeps. Your body keeps score, even when you try to ignore it. Every dose you've taken leaves a fingerprint somewhere inside you, and after enough time those fingerprints pile up into scars you can't see but can certainly feel. What began as small changes, pale skin, restless hands, dark hollows under your eyes, grows into a full portrait of decay. The mirror, if you bother to glance at it, reflects someone you barely recognize, and you start to avoid mirrors altogether. The first signs were subtle. A lost pound here, a sleepless night there, but now it's impossible not to notice. Your cheeks sink in, skin clings tighter to bone, your eyes, once bright with ordinary life, dull into half-lidded shadows. Your lips crack, your gums swell, and each tooth feels like it's loosening in protest. Eating becomes an afterthought, then a chore, then something you sometimes can't manage at all. Food has no taste, no pull. You chew mechanically, swallow without appetite, because the only hunger that matters is the one in your bones. Needles leave their map across your arms. Bruises bloom like dark flowers. Some heal, some linger as hard knots under the skin. Others open into sores that crust and scab, never fully closing before another puncture opens nearby. You wear long sleeves even in summer, though the heat makes you sweat through the fabric. You tell yourself it's to stay warm, to protect against the chill, but really it's to hide the evidence. And yet, anyone who looks too closely can see anyway. The tremor in your fingers, the way your veins seem to vanish under scar tissue, the faint chemical smell clinging to your clothes. Historians still argue whether the human body is more resilient than fragile. You discover it's both, resilient enough to survive things you thought would kill you, overdoses, infections, days without food, fragile enough that one speck too many, one unwashed needle, one untreated wound could tip you over the edge without warning. Each morning you wake up surprised to still be breathing. Each night you lie down half expecting not to open your eyes again. Your immune system falters. A cut that should heal in days lingers for weeks. A cough rattles your chest and never quite leaves. The cold bites deeper. The heat wears you down faster. Your body no longer defends you the way it once did. It has been conscripted into the endless labor of processing the drug, and it has nothing left to spare. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow and strange. You nod off in public, head drooping onto your chest, only to jolt awake seconds later with your heart hammering. You drift into uneasy dreams filled with voices you don't recognize, streets that twist into endless loops, shadows that chase you but never quite catch you. You wake disoriented, unsure of where you are, unsure of what time it is. Sometimes you sleep in broad daylight, curled on cardboard with traffic rumbling a few feet away. Sometimes you lie awake through the entire night, body restless, mind churning, until dawn creeps in and you finally collapse from exhaustion. The unraveling isn't only visible to you. Strangers glance at you with that particular mix of pity and fear, the way people look at something they don't quite understand but instinctively recoil from. They see the sores, the trembling, the gaunt frame. They wrinkle their noses at the sour, metallic smell that clings to your skin. They step wide around you, muttering under their breath. To them you're less than human, a walking cautionary tale. To you, you're still the same person somewhere inside, but that inside feels further away every day. Even your senses betray you. Food tastes flat, scents you once enjoyed. Coffee brewing, bread baking barely register. Touch is dulled in some places, hypersensitive in others. Music, once a comfort, now feels like static. The world itself seems grayer, dimmer, as though your body has filtered out anything that doesn't contribute to the cycle of craving and relief. You try to ignore the physical unraveling, to focus only on the next dose, the next brief reprieve. But sometimes, in unguarded moments, you catch sight of yourself reflected in a shop window or the dark screen of a phone. The hollow face, the sunken eyes, the trembling lips, it hits you with a wave of recognition so painful you have to look away. You remember old photos, old birthdays, old mornings when your face was fuller, your eyes clear. That person feels like a stranger now, someone you once knew but can no longer summon. The drug demands more as your body weakens. The doses you once measured carefully now feel insufficient. You use more often, pushing your body further even as it falters under the strain. Sometimes your hands are so unsteady you spill the powder, watching helplessly as it scatters across the ground. The hunger howls at the loss, and you scrape desperately to recover every grain. Dignity doesn't matter. Cleanliness doesn't matter. Only the cycle matters. And with every cycle the body frays a little more. The unraveling is slow but merciless, like a rope fraying strand by strand until one day it simply snaps. You don't know when that day will come, but you feel it looming. Every tremor, every cough, every sore that refuses to heal is a reminder that your body can't carry this burden forever. And yet, despite the pain, despite the visible decline, despite the clear signs that your body is failing, you still take the next dose, because the alternative, facing the hunger without it, is worse than death itself. At least with the drug, there is silence for a while. Without it, there is only the scream of your own bones unraveling alongside you. It starts to happen more often than you expect. You think you've learned the doses, the timings, the strengths, but fentanyl doesn't play by rules you can predict. One packet is weak, the next is lethal. One day the powder seems to barely take the edge off, and the next day the same amount drops you into darkness so fast you don't even feel fear. It's like walking across a frozen lake at night, convinced you know which patches of ice will hold you, and then suddenly feeling it give way under your feet. You remember the first overdose as fragments, sitting cross-legged in a friend's bathroom, water dripping from a leaky faucet, tile cold against your legs. A flash of nausea, the rush of warmth that felt wrong somehow, too heavy, too fast, like a blanket thrown over your head. The next moment is nothing, a blank space where time should be. Then a voice far away, frantic, calling your name, pressure on your chest. The sharp hiss of something sprayed into your nostrils. You gasp like a diver breaking the surface, lungs burning, heart hammering. You're alive again, but only halfway. Body heavy and trembling, mind sluggish. Someone tells you what happened. You nod without comprehension, already thinking about where the rest of the powder went. Historians still argue about how people of the past understood death, whether they feared it, accepted it, ritualized it. But you have no such luxury. Death becomes a thing you meet in passing. It's not an abstraction anymore. It's a doorway you stumble through and get dragged back from, gasping, ashamed, still craving. After the first revival, you swear you'll stop. You cry, you shake, you make promises. But withdrawal starts before the tears are dry, and within hours the promise dissolves. Each overdose teaches you less and costs you more. The second time, you're on a park bench, head lolling forward as passers-by stare and hurry away. Sirens wail somewhere in the distance. A stranger, maybe homeless like you, slaps your face, shakes your shoulders, yells at you to stay awake. You're dimly aware of them pushing you onto your side, rummaging in their bag for Narcan. The world narrows to a pinpoint of light, and then opens again with a violent jolt, lungs expanding painfully, stomach twisting as you vomit onto the sidewalk. You hear the stranger's voice, shaky but relieved. You're alive again, coughing, trembling, already ashamed. You mutter thanks but can't meet their eyes. You start to recognize the pattern, the grey skin, the slow breathing, the lips turning blue. You see it happen to others too. People nodding off beside you, sliding off curbs, slumping into heaps. Sometimes there's someone to revive them, sometimes not. You've watched more than one body grow still, eyes open but empty, before the ambulance arrives. Each time you tell yourself that won't be you, that you've learned your lesson, that you'll be more careful. But fentanyl doesn't reward caution. Its margin between relief and death is thinner than a breath. The revivals take their toll. Narcan snaps you back but leaves you shivering, sweating, heart racing. Your nose bleeds. Your muscles ache. You feel exposed raw, as though someone peeled off your skin. People crowd around, paramedics, police, strangers with cell phones, and you want to shrink into the pavement. They ask if you want to go to the hospital. Sometimes you say yes, sometimes you say no, slipping away before paperwork can tie you down. Either way, the hunger returns fast, stronger than before, and the cycle resumes. It's not just the physical toll. Each near-death chips away at something deeper. At first you're terrified. You pray even if you haven't prayed in years. You promise you'll call your mother, enter rehab, throw away your stash. But after a few revivals, the fear fades into a dull resignation. Death stops being an enemy and becomes a shadow walking alongside you. You start to think of it less as an ending and more as a kind of rest. You tell yourself if it happens, it happens. You've seen enough bodies to know it will come eventually. The only question is when. Yet there's always that small flicker, that instinct that clings to life, even as the darkness closes in. Your body gasps, claws, tries to rise. Even as you slip under, a part of you hopes someone will find you in time, that a hand will shake you, that a spray of Narcan will drag you back. It's a strange, shameful hope, to be saved only to go back to the thing that nearly killed you, but hope nonetheless. Sometimes, lying awake after another close call, you wonder how many lives you've already used up. You picture them as matches in a box, each strike burning bright for a moment, then going out. How many are left? You don't know. You only know the box is lighter, and still you reach for the next dose. Because the hunger doesn't stop, because withdrawal feels like dying anyway, because relief is the only thing left that makes you feel human, even for a moment. You start to sense the end approaching not as a single dramatic event, but as a gradual dimming, like a candle burning lower and lower each night. Your body slower to recover after each revival, your mind foggier, your hands clumsier. You tell yourself you're just tired, just cold, just sick. But deep down you know, the line between near death and death is thinning, and one day soon there will be no one there to pull you back. And yet, as the city sleeps and the stars wheel overhead, you still shuffle to the corner, still hand over crumpled bills, still cook the powder with practiced hands. You still whisper to yourself that you'll quit tomorrow even though tomorrow is always just another name for today. The hunger rises, the world fades, and you brace yourself for the next crossing, not sure whether you'll come back this time but unable to stop walking toward it anyway. In the end, there isn't a dramatic finale. No spotlight, no sirens blaring for you alone. The life you've been living doesn't explode. It simply thins out like breath on a cold window until it disappears. You wake one morning on a piece of cardboard under an overpass. The sky is low and grey, traffic rumbling above like distant thunder. Your body is heavy, slow, sore from sleep and from everything else. You reach for your bag. It's lighter than you remember. Your fingers fumble at the zipper and find only scraps. You shuffle to the familiar corner, but the faces have changed. The man who hummed to himself is gone. The woman with the stroller hasn't been seen for days. Rumors float through the street, like drifting smoke. Someone overdosed in a public restroom. Someone else was found behind the grocery store. You nod without comment. You've stopped asking names, stopped keeping track. Every story is the same story. The hunger is still there, of course. Even at the end, it doesn't fade. It's softer now. Not a roar, but a whisper. Like an animal that's been fed too many times to fight anymore. Your body feels strange, numb in some places, trembling in others. Hands that once worked tools now shake so badly you can barely hold a lighter. Your heartbeat stutters like an old engine. You notice but don't panic. The fear burned out of you somewhere back on the path. Historians still argue whether death comes as a thief or as an old friend. For you, it feels like both. You're exhausted from the cycle, but part of you still hopes for a reprieve, a miracle, a door you can still walk through back to the world you left. You think of the small scraps of paper you once kept with numbers on them. You imagine calling one. You imagine someone answering, but your hands don't move. The phone you once had is gone. The numbers are gone. The people may be gone too. One evening you sit on a curb as dusk folds over the city. The air smells faintly of rain and car exhaust. A bus wheezes to a stop nearby. People step off, chatting, clutching bags, heading toward homes you can no longer picture. You feel a strange calm watching them. You remember doing the same thing once, stepping off a bus, unlocking a door, cooking dinner, laughing at a show. It feels like a story you were told long ago, half forgotten. The last dose comes like any other. No special occasion, no ritual, just a small packet handed off, a brief exchange of money, a nod. You prepare it with the same practiced hands. You lean back against a wall, exhale, let the warmth rise. It feels almost gentle this time, like sinking into a bath. Your limbs loosen, the city fades. You close your eyes. Maybe someone finds you. Maybe no one does. Maybe a stranger notices and calls for help, and a paramedic kneels beside you, spraying Narcan into your nostrils, pressing hard on your chest. Maybe you gasp and cough and come back again, trembling, ashamed, still craving. Or maybe not. Maybe this is the time no one comes, the time the line finally dissolves completely. For the people who loved you once, the silence arrives as a phone call, a knock at the door, a headline. A mother answers in the early morning and hears a stranger's voice say the words no parent should hear. A brother stares at a screen, scrolling through the last message you sent months ago. A friend sits on a couch, numb, trying to picture where you are now. The grief is quiet but heavy, like wet cloth draped over their shoulders. They remember your laugh, your face at 17, the way you used to hum when you were nervous. They don't remember you as a headline. They remember you as a person. And so your story folds into theirs, into 1,000 other stories like it. The horrifying life of a fentanyl addict in America doesn't end with a single person's death. It lingers in the families who grieve, in the communities frayed, in the small empty spaces where someone used to stand. It lingers in statistics that grow higher each year, in policy debates, in the quiet work of outreach workers carrying Narcan, in the eyes of strangers who have been revived 3 times already, and still walk toward the next dose. As you drift off now, listening to this story, imagine the silence that follows. Not a sharp, cruel silence, but a soft one, like snow falling, like waves on a shore at night. The kind of silence that invites reflection, that reminds you every number in a headline was once a name, once a heartbeat, once a person who felt cold and hungry and hopeful just like anyone else. In that silence, perhaps, lies the faintest possibility of change, not for the person already gone, but for the next one standing on the edge. Now, let the sounds around you fade. Let your breathing slow. The story has run its course, from the first prescription to the last breath, from the glow of promised relief to the dimming of everything else. It's a hard story, but we've walked it gently, step by step, together. And as the last words settle, may the darkness around you feel not heavy but restful. May the silence hold you softly, and may you find in sleep the calm that so many sought and could not keep.